and welcome to Lincoln to Local. I'm Hannah Davis, and today we're excited to be joined by Senator James Leewright, who's going to share with us a little bit of an update on the legislature's work to expand rural broadband. Senator Leewright, first of all, thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you here. We'd like for you to start off. Sure. We'd like for you to start off by briefly introducing yourself. Our Farm Bureau members know you pretty well, but introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your district.
Sure. My name's James Leewright. I am Chair of Business, Commerce, and Tourism, and I live in Creek County, Bristow address. I serve all Creek County and the southern part of Tulsa County.
That's great. So we talk a lot about rural broadband, especially here at Farm Bureau, and there's been a lot of discussions for years on expanding access to it. But if we could start off by maybe providing us an overview of what the state of rural broadband is, or just broadband in Oklahoma and the need.
Absolutely. What we've done is, as Chair of Business, Commerce, and Tourism, I was shocked when I would meet with companies coming into the state, especially when they're looking to relocate to rural areas, that the first question wasn't human resources, it was more what was the connectivity. And so it's a very important, not just for our residents here, but for economic development. With that in mind, about 2 years ago, we put together the Rural Broadband Council, got that legislation through. And what that does is it brings the private sector in. Myself and Representative Logan Phillip are the chairs of it. And we look to the private sector on how we can get everybody together to make a very positive and point towards those areas that we need to increase connectivity in underserved areas.
Where are maybe some of those underserved areas? Are they all primarily rural, or is it all across the state?
No, I've had to watch myself to say rural areas, because there are underserved areas in urban areas, especially suburban areas. So it's important that we're looking at all underserved areas, but the predominance of them are in the rural areas. For sure.
And so what are, some people might say, why is it so difficult in 2021 to bring those areas broadband access to the internet? It seems like an essential kind of necessity for people today. So what are some of the challenges that we've encountered?
Cost is a huge barrier. Adoption rates, which as I've dove more into this, if a company's looking to go into an area, the adoption rates that come along with that, you may have a housing addition that has 10 houses, but maybe only 2 are actually want the service. So when we're looking to target areas, the adoption rates are very important in that also. And then looking with packages coming from the federal government, making sure that we're looking at those dollars and making sure they're going to the right places. We have one bill up that has gone off the Senate floor that will set up a fund so that it comes in and the Rural Broadband Council and the Commerce Department will help funnel those dollars to the areas that they're most needed. And along with that, we've got legislation that will have mapping. Mapping is very important in targeting those areas. And we're doing something unique that hasn't been done before, is we're reaching out to the private sector and getting their information, a lot of confidential. We're packaging it up so that we don't have problems with the confidentiality of it, but we can actually target areas more precisely and see where those underserved areas. So it's a total package of all the bills that we're bringing into the legislature to help promote broadband.
Definitely. So that was going to be my next question, is about where those bills are at. You've got kind of a whole package of it. So where do those go from here?
Yes, they're working through. This is our deadline week for opposite chamber. Bills have been going through fairly successful. There's about 8 bills that will help promote this, and it's all setting the groundwork for the future. One of the things that we have to keep in mind is we're not going to solve this connectivity issue overnight, but Oklahoma is leading the nation and putting in place the infrastructure to get these things done.
Definitely. So this is kind of a first step, or a first few steps. What's next after this legislative session? What going forward?
When we get these bills passed, we'll start setting the rules and promulgating those for legislation we've passed through the Rural Broadband Council. Tomorrow's another meeting with that Rep. Logan and I chair, and working with the private sector to see how we can best serve areas that are underserved and get broadband to them.
And if you could briefly, you've mentioned it a couple of times, explain what exactly the Rural Broadband Council is.
Yes, it expanded. One of the pieces of legislation was we added a tribal member because they're very important in expanding rural broadband, and also a WISP provider, a wireless internet service provider. And along with that, we added not just a mayor of a small rural town, but it can be a former mayor, so we can broaden our pool of applicants for that. We also raised it from 25,000 to 35,000 people for the town. As we know, it's not just a rural issue. And so we all work together. We have multiple subcommittees, policy, mapping, and so forth. And they do a lot of line share work in those subcommittees and bring back to the General Council where we make decisions for policy for the next year.
So farmers and ranchers, our members, are obviously very passionate about this issue, making sure that their communities have access to high-speed internet. So is there anything that Farm Bureau members can do to be involved in this discussion to support this expansion?
Absolutely. Reaching out to your legislators and tell them how important this issue is to them is the best thing you can do to promote getting rural broadband to underserved areas.
Definitely. Well, thank you for joining us, Senator Leewright, and for the update. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Anna.
And thank you for joining us for another episode of Lincoln to Local.